so the next item of business is our special our amendments to the Constitution. Now this actually requires a special resolution. For those who are not sure, a special resolution is where we actually, instead of just needing what's called a simple majority, which is 51% of those voting, we actually need to have a 75% majority in order for a special resolution to be passed. Changes to the Constitution, or the Constitution is the rules by which the association operates. And so the changes to the Constitution requires 3/4 or in excess of 3/4 of the members present eligible to vote and present here to agree to this change. So it is very important. We think, if I can just run through in fact, we have, would anyone like to, and possibly I'm looking at Peter here, to move a motion that we do amend the Constitution according to the details provided to you?
No. Yes.
Thank you, Peter. And Paul, Paul is seconding that. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of discussion on the motion, I'd just like to run through before we vote on it. And voting needs to be this sort of thing by secret ballot. And so our secretary, whose name is Peter, and also he is our polling officer, returning officer, will hand out a ballot form to each of the people here who are eligible to vote. And that is professional class members and corporate class members who are the voting representative from that organisation. So so Peter will do that in just a minute. But before we do that, let me just run through some of the key points. Has everyone had a look at the changes that are proposed for the Constitution? There's lots of there's copies of this document on the web, has been for in excess of 30 days, as is required by both our Constitution and also the law. So we have copies here. A lot of these are housekeeping, and you'll see that there are some very minor things, just adjusting names and numbers and things like that. But there are some things that I would like to highlight for you, just so you're so you do actually understand the ramifications of this. What we're doing is we're changing it from a WAIA West Australian focus to more of a national focus, because our objectives up until now have really been saying, okay, we're here to support the interest of the West Australian internet community. So we want to change that to the interests of the internet community in Australia. Now, is this a big change? Well, yes and no. It's changing the focus from WA to national. So we need to reflect that in our rules. We have our focus ever since inception has been on Western Australia, but we've always had a big picture view of what's going on, because the internet doesn't just exist here in Western Australia. We've always, ever since the start, said, okay, we're here as looking after Western Australia, or trying to help the internet in Western Australia, but saying we're just a little part of it, and we need to make sure that we're understanding what's going on in the rest of the world as well. So I guess a lot of the changes that are proposed reflect that particular clarification, or that growth, really. And so I draw your attention just to those that are going through. There are, it was sort of an unwritten rule, but now we want to put it into the Constitution, that the corporate membership is available. Corporate membership is required for anybody connecting into into any of the IX Australia, into any of the IX points. So that will require corporate membership. However, we do want to be able to reserve the right for affiliate members who aren't in a position, for whatever reason, to become a corporate member. We want to reserve the right for us, the executive, to be able to make a decision at its discretion to allow affiliate members, who may be not-for-profits or who may be whatever are appropriate for affiliate members, to be able to connect into the IX points without needing to be a corporate and pay corporate membership fees. So that's a change that we're seeking to add into the new or the revised Constitution. I also draw your attention to Clause 9(1)(c), which is the Constitution, which is about the executive. The executive shall consist of 3 representatives of professional members and 5 representatives of corporate members. That is how it is at the moment. But it's also an unwritten rule, is that only members in each class get to vote for the representatives of that class. So we wanted to clarify that, just because some people look at it and say, actually, it's not really clear who votes for whom. And so professional members get to vote for the professional representatives, and corporate members get to vote for corporate representatives. And so that's what we're clarifying in the change there in 9(1)(c). Meetings, we already conduct meetings in different ways, and so 9(4) refers to that. Another change that's not just a housekeeping one, that actually is it's important, and I'd like to draw your attention to it, is clause 10(4), which the current constitution, and this is something that was probably, I think, only added in just in the recent years, says that members of the executive can only serve a maximum of 4 consecutive years in any role, excluding the position of president. In other words, the president can say president for forever, who wanted. Sorry, but I don't want it, not forever. In any consecutive years. And so what we want to do, we looked at ways to change that, because that's very limiting. And so we're saying, rather than trying to change it and say, okay, well, it's 5 years, we're saying, let's just remove that, because it's up to the executive. Members of the executive elect the office bearers, including the president, including the treasurer, and including the secretary. And it's those are the 3 positions that refers to, really. So members of the executive vote on who they think is going to be the best person to be president, the best person to be treasurer, and the best person to be secretary. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't have a restriction on that based on, well, he's already done it for 4 years, he's not eligible, even though he's by far the best person, he's no longer eligible. So we're recommending to remove that restriction. 10(7) is a new clause that we're wanting to add in, or a new section of it, and I'll just read it to you. An elected professional member is not eligible to also act as the representative of an elected corporate member on the executive. And so basically what that's saying is, if you are representing, if you are elected as a professional member in your own right as an individual professional member, and you work for a corporate member, and the corporate member wants you to be on the executive, you don't get 2 votes. We don't actually want the same person being representative of both professional class and corporate class, and thinking that one person can have 2 votes. Too much likely to sway what's going on, if that's the way to sway an outcome, given that there are only 8 positions on the executive. We don't want one person to have 2 votes. And so we're really wanting to add that in to make sure, as a safeguard, that it's very, very clear that somebody cannot be both a professional member and a representative of a corporate member. Does that make sense? Okay. And I think that's basically it. The others are pretty much housekeeping, just going through and correcting things. I'm not trying to reduce the significance of any of the recommended changes in here. If anyone's got any questions on any of these suggestions or recommendations, I'd love to hear them, and let's have some discussion here.
Yeah, so in section 3, the aims and objectives, I can see that the code of conduct was a housekeeping decision. It already says that 4 members agree to the code of conduct, and that's not being removed or removed from the objectives even, it's just duplication.
Yes.
So, but I was also quite so sure about the dispute resolution. Are we no longer offering that?
It's not so much that we're no longer offering it, but it's not an objective of the association. It's not one of the reasons why we exist, right? To provide dispute resolution. There was a time going back, and I joined the executive, I think, for the first time in about 2000 or thereabouts. There was a time when there was a few little bits of argy-bargy between different ISPs, and we thought, we being the executive thought, maybe there's a role we can help to play. If there's a disagreement between one ISP with another, maybe there's a role we as the association can play to help resolve disputes, and also disputes from consumers or customers of ISP. And so we actually thought, that's not really our role. Our role is not really to say, oh, ISP A is having a dispute with ISP B, let's try and be the mediator. You know, that's not our role. We're happy to get involved if that helps, but we don't see that as an objective of the association to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to accuse you of rushing it, but you know, the first I realised this was coming was when I reviewed the changes just recently, and I don't know how often that was exercised, but it did seem to be a useful offering for the association.
The last one we had was over 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a non-member who had a dispute with their ISP who was a member. So in that situation, it wasn't really much for us to do. And the member was, they obviously needed to go up to the TIO because that's what...
Well, I think the situation I'm thinking of is if you claimed that someone wasn't meeting their code of conduct obligations, they weren't respecting your privacy or something like that, that might be a reason to come to WAIA as opposed to the TIO.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, we haven't had one in a long time, and I think it's was really a decision that we've got other things we can focus on that can, you know, help improve our community and our industry.
Yeah.
So it's not, as Richard said, it's not saying we're going to ignore altogether, because by all means, I mean, if our members had an issue with another member, we definitely want to help facilitate something. So
yeah,
it is just, yeah, it wasn't, we as the executive thought it wasn't a core objective of ours.
Which is really what it was about, it was inter-member disputes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the members have to comply with the code of conduct, and if someone's not, and you tell us about it, well, the ultimate would be for them not to be a member anymore.
yeah.
So those sort of things, WAIA still have to deal with. We still have to deal with people not paying bills and things like that. But yeah, the customer to company disputes, yeah, 5 years since the last one, before that, probably a few years before that. And these days for the consumers, they will probably get a better outcome doing something like that TIO. You know, if it's bad advertising, other avenues they go through as well. So I guess when the internet was a newer thing and people got confused or bamboozled by things, now I think there's some pretty good avenues for consumers to go to. And most ISPs these days have a pretty good method for complaining, getting disputes resolved before you even end up with TIO. So
Yeah.
I don't know if we can add a lot of value there.
Yeah.
For customer to ISP type disputes.
I
Certainly if someone's not complying with our code of practice, then that's a way we should.
Yeah, I think it's partly a maturing of the ISP, reluctant to say industry, but the ISP sector is maturing, where more appropriate business practices are in place by more people, because those who don't stay around. So I guess what we're saying is we recommend that we remove that, not that we don't ever do it, but that we remove it as a key objective and a stated aim of the association. So, okay, would you like to ask a question?
I just want to thank you for asking that question. When I read through the changes, it did stand out as, wow, that's possibly the biggest change. Looking through everything that's been presented tonight, it strikes me that as a not-for-profit, we have a very healthy bank account, and I'd hate to see it spent on lawyers if something came up that the executive weren't really in the situation to cover and said, well, the Constitution says we have to cover this, let's hire a lawyer and get involved. And so I think it's a really good change.
So I think you're supporting the removal of it. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And that's a valid point, that if we see it as our objective and that we have to do it, and we have to then hire lawyers because someone doesn't want to do what we recommend in terms of dispute resolution, then it kind of gets ugly and potentially. So as you say, we've probably got better things to do.
Just, I can raise just one other point. In terms of, we're now Australia-wide, so sort of undertaking that task would be a lot more complex as well. If there was a potential member in Victoria, or two members of Victoria that were in conflict, we might not be in the best position to
There's two
that.
messages there. One, if we're saying we don't want to do it at all, or that we don't want to be obligated to do it.
Yeah, it's more that we don't want to be obligated. Well, it's not so much even that. It's because we're not obligated to it, but we don't see it as one of our aims and objectives of the association. Like when we say, why do we exist? What is our purpose in life? It's actually not to do dispute resolution between members. But it doesn't mean we can't do it. Well, we can do it if we can help, because that kind of covers off on some of the other things. Helping to, for example, support and protect the interests of the internet community in Australia. You know, we can say, well, actually, part of that is getting people to agree with each other more appropriately. And so, if that works, that works. Okay. Are there any other questions about the proposed changes to the Constitution? We're really happy to discuss it. This is important, and I don't want to in any way reduce the significance of it. But at the same time, if you've all sort of thought about it, then it's time to vote. So, Mr. Peter, returning officer, can you return to your...
Well, Scott,
Okay, it actually is a bit complicated. And so Peter will explain why it's complicated. Let me just introduce it by saying what we need to make sure is that those people who are professional members in their own right can put your hand up and get a voting slip from Peter for this special resolution.
I need to make sure they're actually on the list.
Or you got
two. Nick Bannon. There we go.
So,
I'll walk quickly.
yeah.
Blackbird.
So Peter, have you got a list?
Yeah, I've got this here. I'll work off lists. The same for the voting classes.
Okay, so
Brad Crew.
Can I ask?
what we're going to do, hang on, just so, Peter's got a list which he thinks is right. What we'll do is let him go through his list, and anyone who thinks they're eligible to vote at the end of Peter's list, put your hand up if you haven't got a voting slip. Okay. Yes.
Can I ask a question about just the consistency thing with the IX Australia having a hyphen
Oh my God.
in one case?
Thanks, Robert.
I just thought that if it's going to get written into the Constitution, it should at least be consistent across all. 3.2 has it with a hyphen, everywhere else has it without.
You got two, mate.
3.2.
On the first page.
Okay. So we.
I know it's insignificant compared to the other thing, but I'm just thinking if it gets voted in, does it need another resolution to remove it?
It is totally okay. Thank you. It is totally okay for us, for anyone, to move an amendment. We have a motion to move to change the Constitution based on this. The way to change that is to move an amendment to the motion, to amend the motion, and I'm not being funny, this is actually a genuine thing, to amend the motion to change 3.2 to remove the hyphen, or change the others to include the hyphen. So if you want to move such an amendment motion, please feel free.
Okay, I would like to move.
Okay, which is...
To remove the hyphen from 3.2.
Okay, so we have somebody is proposing an amendment to the motion, and that amendment is to remove the hyphen from IX Australia in 3.2 in that proposed constitution. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes.
Peter Nicholas is seconding.
Kill the hyphen.
Okay. So firstly, before we go to the Constitution, we need to vote on the amendment. It gets a bit technical because it's all got to be a secret ballot. So I think
Are we allowed to propose an amendment without 40 days notice?
we are. We are. I actually checked because I was thinking of doing the same thing. Well, I'm not. Technically, the amendment probably does need a secret ballot, but in the scheme of things,
Copies of the amendments must be made available to members 30 days before the meeting.
copy of. We've made it.
This is a new amendment. So people are supposed to vote who haven't seen that.
Under the rules. Oh well.
There's no postal vote on this.
No postal vote
It's only members.
for...
So I think for pragmatism and we will have a show of hands for the amendment, but and if it gets through, then that will change the main motion to allow for the removal of a hyphen. So those in favour of the amendment, please put your hand up. Those against. Okay, that was unanimously carried. So that's and for those, if anyone wants to dispute that one later, then you know. It's probably a typo. Typos can change the course of history, and we don't need it. Okay.
You got hyphens on that.
I know, and can we not get too focused on the hyphens? We're now going to have a vote. Has everybody who thinks they're eligible to vote got a voting slip to do the vote? Does anybody who thinks they're eligible not have a voting slip? Please put your hand up if that is you. Okay, good. In that case, can I now ask you to cast your vote, and the returning officer, aka Peter, will collect it from you. And bear in mind, we need a 75% majority for this. Digger.
It's down. Sure about wait and see next year.
Now, you've got to have a half in the fair point, otherwise they'll be dumb.
It doesn't require.
Okay, so those who've got their voting slip completed, please hand it to either Kelly or Peter. Kel? Here's another one. Thank you. Okay. So,
75%.
pardon?
75%.
75%. We also, this is also open for postal votes, and we have provided members.
No, this is members present.
Oh, actually, that's true. This is not open for postal votes. Incorrect on my part. According to our constitution, the rules can only be changed by members present. Okay. The other ballots that we're having a little later on are open for postal votes, but this one is specifically for people present here today. Okay, so we'll just wait with bated breath until the outcome is delivered.
No pressure.
And then, just to give you an update, the next item of business is going to be Mr. Joe Wooler giving an update on peering and things technical. And after that, we will get on to the election of office bearers. And this is the longest AGM we've ever had. Sorry about that.
They keep running out to see if they got through.
I've got some bad news.
Uh-oh.
It's carried.
It's carried. And it's carried what percentage?
Unanimous.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. That's great. So, thank you. That's wonderfully appreciate your support with that. So, special resolution needing 75%, actually got 100%. That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next item of business, and that is Joe giving a very quick update on the technical services.